Morning, happy Wednesday. So if you saw the little post, the social media post that I put out on Instagram, LinkedIn and Facebook yesterday, you would realize that my intention was to post this small chat on conflict and anger yesterday. It turns out that I did record this entire thing, but if you've watched any of the previous videos, you would know I have the tendency to be slightly technologically challenged. So it turns out yesterday I did the entire thing with a phone pointed directly up my nose, which is not necessarily pleasant for the viewer. Slightly distracting. So while the content of the conversation was important, the visuals were really not so great. So I decided to redo it this morning outside with mental clarity and some really beautiful sun early in the morning. I do tend to be more of a morning person. So hi, yes, an important conversation and relevant information in terms of interactions that I've been having and questions that I've had concerning dealing with anger and conflict. So I'm just going to hop straight into it and try to keep this as efficient and as short as possible with the most useful information that and tips that are actually helpful for you and things that you can implement directly into your life, ideally from as soon as you choose to do so. So from the world of, I'm going to start with the world of Asian wellness. So this would include information from Chinese medicine, yoga, and the sister science of yoga being Ayurveda. There's an understanding that our physical body works a bit like an engine of a vehicle, right? So we consume food and then there is a process of metabolism. In this process of metabolism and transformation, the food is obviously, transformed from gross material that we eat into energy that we then use. And in this process of metabolism and transformation, there is heat that is generated. So this links very much into the conversation of understanding anger and conflict. In Asia, there is an understanding that the amount of heat that's generated in your body is directly related to your capacity to be angry or easily angered. So when there is too much heat, instead of directly trying to interact with the behavior or the mindset of the individual, which is very much a Western approach, is that we try to alter the behavior or we try to alter the mindset of the person. In Asia, the understanding is that we rather deal with the body first. So in dealing with the body with anger and conflict, if we can just cool down the temperature of the physical body consistently, the person is less likely to be irritated or aggressive, and all of the unbeneficial behaviors that come with anger will be diminished. So this is one clear explanation as to why water is so important. Right, so we grow as babies, we are cultivated in water for 9 months. We come into this earth through having lived in water for 9 months. And so in terms of regulating your body temperature and regulating the things that are either beneficial or unbeneficial, water features and water is very, very important. Your consumption of water and as well as spending time in water. So from the world of Ayurveda, which is very similar, there's a lot of correlation between Ayurveda and Chinese medicine in terms of understanding the 5 elements of the body. In Ayurveda, there's an understanding of 3, I've mentioned it before, 3 doshas, which is like the easiest way to explain this is basically 3 body types, whereby it's the kind of body that you have as well as your personality and characteristics that you are born with and how you and the lifestyle that you lead. So the more, as I've explained before with myself, more the red hair, the curly red hair and the olive Mediterranean skin type, very prominent features and very prominent eyes, these people tend to have, we tend to have an excess of heat from the beginning, right? So this information is important to know from a perspective of self-awareness, because you're then able to better manage yourself, right? And I specifically used words like manage yourself and self-regulate as opposed to control, right? So we're not trying to control anything or anybody, including yourself, because this just ends up causing a situation of suppressing emotions and trying to be something that you're not. It becomes a process of self-awareness and self-regulation, in that the more information that you have about your basic body type and your general characteristics we are then able to actually manage ourselves and self-regulate much better. So the red, fiery, passionate kind of personality, and it's not only people with red hair, but the Latino cultures, for example, we can go through all of these cultures where the people tend to be very, very passionate. There tends to be an excess of heat in these people from the beginning. So directly correlating to the organs, there is an understanding, I'll consistently refer to both Chinese medicine and Ayurveda because there is such a huge overlap. There is an understanding whereby your liver is the organ that processes heat, and which is then directly affected by anger. So when there is toxicity of the liver, there's more likely to be these big emotional explosions, or excess heat in the body generally then causes excessive reactions, right? A struggle to actually manage our emotions when they show up. They're more explosive. So one of the easiest ways to just simmer this down and deal with this is to simply detox your liver, and then maintain a healthy liver over, ideally over the course of your life. So the simplest ways to do this for yourself is, first of all, taking a daily supplement of milk thistle is very, very helpful in supporting your liver function. A daily supplement of turmeric, or you can put this in your food, is very helpful. And then the third thing is also very, very simple, is just 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in a small amount of water, just like this, every night before you go to bed. So this helps to support the liver and helps to just, first of all, keep the heat down, helps to flush everything out, and it's basically liver health. And it's very, very interesting because for a lot of the people that I've worked with, this is one of the first things that they notice a huge difference in their demeanor is once you actually start detoxing the liver and flushing everything out, the emotions tend to just follow suit. It doesn't become this inner conflict where we're consistently battling with ourselves and we're trying to do this and we're trying to, be better, or, it's important to realize that when there are, people where there tends to be this explosive outer behavior, there is very much an inner behavior as well. There is a constant inner struggle and an inner discomfort, or an inner dis-ease is how I would put it. And then this very much displays outwardly. But once we just settle the liver and get rid of this excess toxin, the behavior and the symptoms, because the behavior is very much a symptom of what's going on inside your body, the behavior just naturally starts to settle. Now, this is one aspect that is very supportive in terms of the behavior, and then the other aspect is actually directly dealing with the behavior. So from an early childhood development perspective, what we have a clear understanding of is that between the ages of about 18 and 24 months, this is when babies are very much, the world pretty much revolves around a child between the ages of 18 and 24 months. They have no concept of other, they have no concept of how their emotions or reactions might be impacting other people, because that's the nature of developing as a child. We're still learning. So this is the age where there's a lot of temper tantrums and anger, and there is no level of either self-awareness or self-regulation. It becomes a matter at that process. It becomes a matter of the environment cultivating behavior. Again, I specifically say the environment cultivating behavior because I don't have, being educated and qualified and having substantial experience in early childhood services and early childhood development. My personal belief is that it truly does take a community to raise a child. It's not entirely, of course, the primary caregiver, the primary caregivers are the parents, but these little ones are also very much impacted by the entire environment that's around them, the culture, and society at large. So the people that children are surrounded by at a very, very early age has a direct impact on the kind of people that they are going to end up being. So between 18 and 24 months, we really have no concept of how to handle our emotions in any way, shape and form. But as we develop between the ages of 48 months and 4 years, this is when there is the prime time to share skills and teach little ones how to actually become self-aware understand their emotions, and understand how to self-regulate. Now, this is one of the main differences. I've referred to this a number of times in the clips that I've done. This is one of the main differences between the East and Asia, between the East and the West, is that we are simply not taught in the West about self-awareness or self-regulation. There is a movement that is now coming along slowly with younger parents in terms of trying to be conscious parents and conscious parenting. There is a slight change now, but the previous generations, keeping in mind that the post-World War II generation, they really had, life was really hard for these people. They had just come out of World War II. There was a lot more important things to be paying attention to in terms of raising your children than teaching these people how to become self-aware and self-regulate. It really was a matter of taking care of day-to-day necessities. So the social and emotional aspect of how these people were raised is very different to the generations that have come post-World War II. And I'm mentioning this because it's important to just highlight the fact that many times when I work with the younger generations, especially when it comes to things like anger and conflict, people are they're very quick to kind of blame how they were raised or put the blame on other people as to why their behavior is the way that it is. So I'm specifically pointing out that the post-World War II generation, so these are people born, obviously 1940s, 1950s, their skill set is totally different to the generations that have come after them, because the environment that these people lived in and were raised in, the situations that they have come from, is entirely different. So blame can never be allocated. It becomes a matter of becoming self-aware of the skills that you do have, the skills that you don't have, and then cultivating those things that you realize that you need. Okay, so personally I believe that everyone has gaps, like even myself, right? There's aspects of myself that still need to be cultivated, and perhaps that continues until we die. I don't believe that anyone is ever perfect, and there should never be that expectation, but we can always do a little bit better once we realize that things are not working out as we would like them to. So ideally, between the ages of 48 months and 4 years, we're supposed to learn, in an ideal situation, these children would learn how to become self-aware and how to self-regulate something like anger. Now, when we fast forward, two of the main reasons why I'm often contacted by men or the men that I've had on private retreat, this applies to both men and women, but it does seem to be a bit more prominent with men, because it's important to highlight that there is substantial vulnerability. There's substantial vulnerability for both men and women to reach out and decide to do some personal development, but more so with men, because there is still very much this culture of toxic masculinity and vulnerability in terms of being perceived like something is wrong with you, or you're not perfect. There is this unpleasant judgment that men really struggle with. So for them to reach out and ask for help or book a retreat and take some time for themselves is very, very difficult. And so I'm highlighting that because I respect that and I realize that, and it's important for me just to share that, so that if you're watching this as well, you realize, I think most importantly, you just realize the kind of person that I am, that there is empathy and there is clarity in the situations that you're dealing with. Two of the main reasons why, and I'm saying this because two of the main reasons why men tend to struggle, one is high functioning depression, whereby they just they don't really feel entirely settled within themselves, but they can't necessarily put a finger on what's going on with them, so they work consistently. They just power through it, because if they don't work or if they slow down, this discomfort becomes a little bit more prominent. It kind of pops up, right? So the analogy that I make is a bit like styrofoam. The more we try to push these things that we don't want to think about this, we don't want to deal with this, so you push it down, you suppress all of these emotions, you suppress all of these thoughts, a bit like a massive piece of styrofoam. But after a certain time, like this big block of styrofoam is going to break off into small little pieces, and these things are going to just, it starts popping up all over the place in the form of triggers. And without the skills to actually handle the situation better, it becomes explosive, which then leads to conflict and problems. So yes, the first reason is high functioning depression, and then the second one is exactly this, conflict management and how to handle anger in a better way. So hopefully that little tiny blob of information that I've given you in terms of actionable steps that can be implemented to take care of your liver and to spend some more time in water is helpful, right? So having a bath, ideally having a bath once a week in Epsom salts is really, really good in terms of just detoxing your entire body and allowing your nervous system, so from a Western perspective and from an occupational therapy perspective, allowing your nervous system to self-regulate, right? So when you're consistently on this treadmill, the body is consistently flooded with cortisol, which is your stress hormone. Your nervous system struggles to regulate. So if your nerves are, compared to this little piece of wire, the myelin sheath, which is this outer covering of the nerve, ends up getting worn down from excessive stress, from excessive cortisol, and it ends up causing almost like the wires within your body almost start short-circuiting, right? So this is why when something happens and you're immensely triggered, it goes from being something very, very simple to to an absolutely explosive situation very quickly, because the myelin sheath is wearing down. This then, one of the ways that you can support your nervous system and the myelin sheath, one is to spend time in water and have a bath once a week in Epsom salts. And the second thing is to increase your omega. So especially omega-3. Personally, I take 2,000, so I take 2 capsules of 1,000 milligrams omega every morning and 2 capsules again at night. So I'm taking 4,000 milligrams of omega-3 every day, specifically to support the myelin sheath on my nerves. This is purely because we exist in the world at large now. Everyone is existing with high levels of stress and environments that are immensely challenging. So in terms of supporting your nervous system and your liver, these 2 aspects are vital for me. So yes, I've spoken a bit about the Asian medicine. I've explained a little bit about the early childhood development and just simply not having the skills. For me, the benefit of having this multi-dimensional and kind of interdisciplinary information that I have cultivated in myself with the qualifications and the work experience that I have, it provides a fantastic foundation now to allow myself to kind of leapfrog in terms of human development, right? So to kind of leapfrog between early childhood development and use those skills and use the information that we have in dealing with children. It can be used in the same way in dealing with adults, right? So just because you didn't learn necessarily how to become self-aware and how to self-regulate when you were 4 doesn't mean the game is over. It just simply means that with the intellect of an adult, realizing that things are not running as smoothly, it's highly likely that your career is getting impacted. And this is usually one of the main reasons that particularly men reach out for help. They don't usually reach out for help even if they realize that things in their personal lives are not so great and the relationships are not so great. They just kind of power through it, and they very often have this idea or this kind of denial behavior. But they do reach out when it starts impacting their career. This is one of the main reasons why men will ask for help when it starts impacting the potential income flow and the professional interactions that they're having, the professional relationships that they were having. When that is no longer running smoothly, they will reach out for help. Now, ideally, if somebody is watching this, you're going to watch this before it starts impacting your professional relationship, and you can start doing something about it before it actually starts impacting your career. Damaging your reputation because you have less self-awareness or less emotional intelligence and social intelligence is not necessarily ideal. So if we can get ahead of that curve, then it's a win-win for everyone, right? Yeah, so I think there's a lot that kind of comes into this. I've given a really basic framework. Of course, this conversation is a lot bigger. There's a lot more to the conversation of how to manage conflict and how to manage anger. But these are simple little things that you can implement on a daily level. It's also, for me, one of the main reasons why I share this information, and I think it's important to get out. It's important to get out there, because I realize that there is simply an increase in globalization, right? Having lived and worked through 33 countries over the period of 22 years, I've lived and interacted with a number of different cultures. And the only way that we as a species are actually going to continue to move forward without destroying one another and without constant international conflict or community conflict and conflict within homes and then conflict within ourselves is actually to start paying attention to trying to understand why the behavior is occurring in the first place. And so if we can bridge these two worlds, if we can bridge the world of Asian wellness and we can bridge the world of Western healthcare and start addressing things on a personal, on an interpersonal level, it then has a direct benefit to your family, to your community, and to a situation of sustainable globalization as a whole. And so this is very, very important to me, the social impacts of how people are interacting with themselves, and the social impact of how we're interacting with one another is very, very important to me. So as far as I'm concerned, life as a whole is a team sport. And we kind of need to start paying attention to the things that are really, really important to us. So anger and conflict is one of the most damaging emotions that we all have. Everybody has it. It just becomes a matter of realizing what your triggers are, understanding why you're behaving in that way, taking the steps that you can, working directly first with your physical body, and then second with the behavior, and ideally also with the mindset, and then allowing things to start balancing out and kind of manage yourself in this way. And the last thing that I'll also say is a question that I had was, how to deal with families, how to deal with a family situation when the people around you are dealing with anger, but they're not necessarily aware of their own capacity for being inflammatory. And this for me really does just come down to having your own personal boundaries and being aware of what kind of behavior is acceptable for you, what kind of behavior is not acceptable for you. Personally, in terms of the three kind of bodies, again, leapfrogging and circling back to Ayurveda, I've mentioned before that there's the Pitta, the Vata, and the Kapha. So for myself, as an example, I'm a blend of Pitta, which is the fire and the passion, and then Kapha, Kapha, which is more the loyal and the very grounded and very practical and very stable kind of person. I tend to be immensely patient dealing with people, and that's probably why I'm in the industry that I'm in. I'm very good at being the mediator and listening to both sides and ideally not taking things personally. However, it's important to actually have boundaries. We can have empathy and we can try to work with people and we can try to assist and things like this, and we can be understanding whether these are personal relationships, whether they're friends or family or colleagues. But at the same time, it's immensely important for you to have your own personal boundaries, that you don't essentially get hazed by somebody else's anger because they simply are, going through a process of discovery for themselves. And then also sometimes it's important to just name the white elephant in the room, to mention it and say, within this environment, we're consistently dealing with conflict or unpleasant behavior, and it's just not working for me. So there are ways to have intentional communication, right? So when I say intentional communication, I mean that it's important to first be clear within yourself. So we take time first, be clear within yourself what it is that you actually need to communicate from a place of clarity, and from a place of care, and then communicate this clearly, because without this first, again, in terms of early childhood development, one of the first things that we learn in terms of, and we actually, we teach ourselves how to speak. People don't teach us how to speak. We learn how to speak from observation, and from watching and from hearing, we start to speak. So it's important that as adults we don't lose this capacity, right? We don't lose the ability to actually express ourselves is immensely important, because once this, from an Asian perspective, from a yoga perspective, once this area of the body starts shutting down and we communicate less and less and less, it really does become a bit like a Coke bottle, whereby everything here just gets pushed down, and this can then end up being quite destructive and unpleasant and explosive. So if you have any questions, I think it's already 25 minutes. It's a fair amount of information that I've given you. That's actionable steps that you can take, which is the most important thing. One of the most important things for me also, in terms of working with people, whether they join my yoga teacher training or working with me one-on-one, one of the most important things is that we don't create a situation of dependence. It's more a situation of me giving you actionable tools, discussing the things that are very, very important to you, how you want to move forward, what your ideal end result is, that we work towards that, without me necessarily becoming an anchor or something that you consistently have to depend on. It is very much a situation of teaching you how to take care of yourself. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at info@salialife.com, or you can find me on social media via Facebook or Instagram on Salia Life Institute. So have a lovely day, and looking forward to chatting to you again. Bye.